All right, I think, Leanna, should we get started?
Let's get started.
All right, sweet. So thanks everyone for joining. Um, this is our Safe by Density webinar. Joining me is my coworker, Leanna Castello. She's our VP of Customer Success and my partner in crime on these webinars. And I'm Rob Grazioli, one of Density's co-founders and our head of product and design. So today we're again just talking about getting back to work. Earlier in the series, we were talking about how people were leaving work, and I think as optimism increases and people have a higher comfort level, we're seeing some of our customers come back. We want to talk about how they're doing that, and of course how we're helping. So we'll talk a little bit about our Safe product that supports that, and some specific use cases in how both Density as a company and our customers have used those products to do so effectively. And then we'll touch on some Q&A, and there's a little Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll address those questions as they come in. So a little bit about Density first. Density's sensors work and function as a network. These sensors here above the door are our entry sensor. Essentially, they work together to track entrances and exits into a space, and then in real time compute the count of a space. So we can really accurately detect those entrances and exits, and then compute count again at a really high level of accuracy, and produce all sorts of insights with that data set. Now, the way we do that is unique in that it's completely anonymous, and it's all done on the device in real time. So what you're seeing here is an example of raw depth data. It's all that our sensor sees, and we sort of watch people go through these scenes and again count them in real time. And one thing we didn't appreciate as we got into this was just how complex behavior is beneath doorways. Kind of people sound simple, but in reality, it's very challenging to do in real time like this. And then, of course, as we're calculating, we're sending all that information up to our cloud infrastructure, and then presenting that to our customers both in real time and historically through a suite of web and mobile applications with additional features like alerting, real-time messaging, and some insights based on some custom reports that Density has crafted. And of course, always through our API for customers who want to leverage their own applications or internal teams to build something more custom. So getting back to work certainly has been a journey, but people are doing it, and people have had to go back. And one thing that's been really exciting for us is to be part of helping people stay open that needed to be. So working with a lot of our essential customers and ensuring that they're creating a safe environment for their employees. But we are seeing people starting to trickle back, and we wanted to share with you some of what we're seeing. In general, the capacity limits on all spaces have been reduced pretty drastically. We've seen like an anecdotal sort of reduction to about a 20% capacity limit. And that's just, it's very early. So those are rough kind of averages. It very much fluctuates based on the use case and based on the space type, and then some of the safety precautions implemented. But some of those safety precautions include usage-based cleaning. And this is something that you could actually use Density for, but basically as an office is used, sort of tracking how it's used and then cleaning more regularly, but also cleaning more specifically. And Leanna will touch more on that later. And then being transparent about the state of the space and how safe it is. Again, also something Density built a specific solution for that we'll touch on, but they're arming their employees with information that they need to make decisions for their own health and safety. I'll talk about kind of the two-sided nature of safety at the workplace. And then they're also deploying more hybrid work models. I think distributed work is something that personally Density is employed for a long time. That's becoming more of a standard. And I think most of our customers seem to be preparing for that to be the norm moving forward as well. So they're adopting these hybrid work models where going to the office becomes more of a benefit or a perk and less of an actual requirement. And we'll show you how you can use Density to actually manage those transitions into the long-term future office. So one last statement before I hand it over to Leanna. But one thing that we learned early on was that going back to work was going to be really a two-sided problem. One, you have to actually take action and make a place safer, but you also have to reassure people that they are in fact safer. And we wanted to solve both of those problems, and it's really easy to do so, but slip into the world of surveillance because you want to track people, you want to, really like up your measurement. But it's really important for density, and we think important for society to do so without invading privacy, and that's really a core tenet of density. So that's my spiel. I'm gonna hand it over to Leanna, and she's gonna go through some of what density offers and how our customers are using density. Leanna, take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rob. So there's three main categories of functionality that we built out or that our customers have been using to help get either stay at work for companies that are essential businesses and had to stay open and had to have people continue to come in, or companies that are trying to maintain some minimal level of essential staff or starting to think about how they're bringing employees back to work now that there is a vaccine, and maybe more near-term opportunities to bring people back in a safe way. So these three categories largely break into display, or getting the data in the hands of people who are going to be in your space so they can make informed decisions on their own about whether or not to go into a space, whether it's going to be safe, that kind of thing. There's alerts where you can trigger notifications either when certain safety capacities are about to be reached, have been breached, or as Rob talked about earlier, hey, that the restroom's been used about 20 times. We should send in a cleaning crew because we want to make sure we have a regular cadence of actually cleaning spaces as they're being used. And then lastly, there's the category of analytics. And this is where our customers are able to, over time, monitor compliance of these policies that they've put in place. I said I was going to have 30% of people allowed to come back right now. Are all 30% actually coming back on a regular basis? Are they only coming back on certain days? How can I ramp that, or need to ramp it up or ramp it down to make sure my spaces are maintaining safe occupancy levels as I've determined as, a head of facilities, head of real estate, or in some cases, these decisions are being made of like head of, people operations or even security teams. So we're going to walk through some more specific examples of how each of these functionalities are being used today. So first, safe display. Like Rob mentioned, we knew early on that this coming back or even feeling safe at work or in whatever space that you're monitoring is a two-sided problem. There's a problem of actually figuring out what safe occupancy levels are to enable sufficient social distancing, but there's also the perception of, I'm going into a space, I'm out in public, there's this scary virus that I could potentially contract. Like, do I personally feel safe, or do I know whether going into a certain space, especially somewhere like a bathroom or a cafeteria, is going to be really crowded and I'm going to get myself in an uncomfortable situation, or is no one there and I'm going to feel perfectly fine? And so that's where this functionality has actually been deployed very broadly across our customer base, where people are trying to get back to work, or campuses and schools are remaining open. And this functionality is highly customizable in terms of what percentage you want to trigger this wait or go signage. You can adjust on the right-hand side the text, the follow-up information, so that people have more context on how you're managing the space. And we've just found this to be really helpful and empowering for employees, students, patrons of spaces, as our customers have been trying to stay open and have people in their spaces. So bathrooms have been really popular. We never thought we'd be the bathroom company, but bathrooms, because of how anonymous and sensitive our technology is, that's been a very popular place to put this kind of signage. But we've also seen break rooms, dining halls, lobbies, other spaces where you don't know necessarily before you go there or before you walk in how busy it's going to be, have been the most have seen the highest adoption of like putting up digital signage and having these like really easy displays that you can just pop into that digital signage using a long-lasting URL.
Yeah, we sort of view this as like a telepathy type of functionality. It's like anytime you need to be in a place and you can't see into it, this has been really successful in exposing that to people and helping them make decisions.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. So the next thing is alerts. So you want it without having to like constantly being logged into a system as a head of facilities, a head of security, or even in some cases as an employee, you want to know how busy is a space and when is it approaching, especially when is it approaching what we have deemed safe occupancy levels. And so there's a variety of different alerts that you can trigger in the system. There's alerts based on occupancy, based on utilization, and then also, we'll talk about this a little bit in the next slide, based on number of visits to a space if you want to enable that usage-based cleaning. But this is just a way that you can, in real time, make sure that you're able to keep those spaces safe. Our customers are using this to, make sure that if we are reaching those capacity levels, that they're potentially sending out personnel to personally manage access in and out, maybe sending out a company email about we have too many people in the office today, please, feel free to go home at lunch, or if you haven't come in yet, don't come in, that kind of thing. And then usage-based cleaning, again, another topic that's come up quite a bit. And there's two sides to this. One is we found customers using this, especially to make sure that, hey, if a space isn't used, if a floor is sitting empty day in, day out, there's no need for us to spend the time and capital to have that space cleaned on a regular basis. On the other hand, in spaces, like maybe a restroom in a space that's open, if it is busy, usage-based cleaning and these alerts that we can put in place and other analytics that we can put in place can help us make sure that we're keeping up a regular cleaning cadence so that we can maintain a high level of cleanliness and safety in these spaces that might be more frequently visited. And then, thinking about monitoring the effectiveness of your strategy over time, with our analytics platform, you can see, again, these trends over time of how are people actually using your space, how is your space, like what are utilization percentages, and how do those compare to your targets. So in this example we pulled from early on in the crisis, you can see at this customer site, they were regularly, and they were targeting trying to be at 100% capacity. They were trying to make sure their spaces were heavily utilized. Then you go to shelter in place, you drop down to 0 because no one's going into the office, or a very minimal, in this case, this is an essential service. So a very, very small number of personnel had to be in the office, but they were keeping it much more like a 10% or below rate. Then as we, in the spring and summer started coming out and seeing a little bit of recovery from COVID, this particular business started ramping up what percentage of employees were allowed to work or needed to be back to work. And with density, they were able to really closely monitor how those policies were being adhered to and take action to ramp up the number of people that were allowed or ramp down the number of people that were allowed as they saw those peaks and valleys of attendance based on what they were targeting for safety purposes.
And I just want to add quickly too, what's been really cool about this is that Density's really been able to leverage our own data set. So internally, while we're distributed and actually, didn't necessarily feel the effects the same way some of our customers have that Leanna will touch on in a sec here, we do have a manufacturing facility that we own and operate ourselves. And we supply this information to some essential businesses that were open. So we had to ensure we could continue to supply sensors to those customers. So we had to run our factory at a lower capacity, and we were able to use our own tools just to make sure if anything escalated or whatever it is, we could check in with our line managers and just make sure everything was okay. So it's been really cool just to kind of dog food our own stuff in a way we haven't really before.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of the questions that I see came in through the chat that's related to the last slide is, what was the average, Robbie shared that really high level average capacity of spaces that are open earlier on in the presentation. Someone asked,
Sure.
what was the average capacity experience prior to COVID? And I'd say this is something that was really all over the map for our customers, depending on the type of business, how they were using the space, and how in some cases how long they'd had density to benefit from understanding true utilization of their space. So in some cases, like for example, this customer that we're looking at here, they've been using density for a while and have used it to make sure they're trying to stay really close to that like 80% to 100% capacity threshold in their spaces, because they want to make the most effective use of their real estate, and they're very, very cost conscious. There are other statistics though about effectively 40% of corporate real estate is underutilized at any point in time. And that's partially why customers use density, is so that you can, and this is what we're going to talk about in the next slide, is that you can have data to make those decisions of how you want your space to be occupied and run, and what capacity you want it to operate at. So Rob, if you go to the, oh, sorry.
No, just to add to that, it's been really fascinating to see how decision making has changed just over the lifespan of density, and watching some of our customers actually use, I would say, like a more robust data set to make decisions, and also just some like convenient features. So like, for example, we're talking about capacity. There are two ways to think about capacity. There's how much can this space physically hold legally, like before it becomes a fire hazard or breaks fire code. And then there's what do we want, or how many people do we want to exist in this space so that they feel comfortable or productive. And so what you're seeing here is actually measurements against a target capacity, and not a just like, oh, there are this many seats. What we found is that a lot of our customers are comfortable with some slack in their space, so that space feels open, people don't feel jam-packed, and so on. So it's been really cool to see how people can leverage that. And even still, like, I would say a general note, Leanna, even though it's kind of all over the map, like underutilization is still pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
And so as people know, there's lease cycles and so on. So we're seeing kind of a long turnover and change. But yeah, maybe Leanna, a little more on this in terms of, how density exposes that information in a little more, I guess, meaty way, where you can quantify what maybe some of that waste or underutilization results in.
Yeah, and this is something that our customers were very much using prior to COVID, and it's been interesting now with, obviously a lot of our customers are focused, like laser focused on health and safety as they're thinking about bringing people back to work. But it's that the conversations that we're having with them are, come for the safety, stay for the cost savings and portfolio optimization. So a lot of our conversations today are, one, how are we bringing people back safely? And then two, what does our new normal look like? How we don't expect to be at a world where everyone's coming to the office every day for the foreseeable future, maybe ever, because of these trends around companies getting more comfortable with working from home, or like at least part-time working from home, and just knowing that it's going to be a while before people feel safe going back to the office. So customers are looking at data on how do they then use density to optimize their real estate portfolio in the way that makes the most sense for them, either around purchasing decisions where they need to add space to the portfolio, or consolidation activities and lease avoidance in cases where, hey, we realize, we've been back at work for a year and we're nowhere near the occupancy levels that we expected. We feel very comfortable having, 50% capacity, or, a certain square foot per employee in the space. We're not reaching that, so we're not going to purchase that additional space. So we're going to consolidate 2 offices or 2 floors into one. And so there's 2 ways that customers are doing this today. One is more the model that I showed you on the last slide about just monitoring utilization over time across all of your spaces to just keep a pulse on how that space is being used. One cool feature that we released last year is taking that a step further and being able to quantify the impact of that underutilized space. So in this example here, you're looking at some customer data over the course of, early basically this year. And so recognizing that this is a space that has been open, has had people in it, but has probably been underutilized compared to historical norms for this particular company. But what you're seeing is you can, in this functionality, it's called available capacity, you can assign a dollar value to the to effectively like each desk or each person up to your max, your target capacity for the space. And then this helps you quantify what your like minimum monthly savings are. So in this case, you can see at some point that we're actually going over capacity in these spaces. So you might actually need to be adding more space to stay within that 100% threshold. On the other hand, there's on average, you're clearly not at 100% every day. And what does it actually mean for the business? What does it under capacity based on the dollar amount that you're paying for each seat or each desk or effectively square foot per person? How does that equivalent? What's the equivalent of like dollars and cents to the business? So this is something that we've seen as was a popular tool earlier this year before, COVID kind of flipped everything on its head and people were trying to target lower capacity for their spaces. But we do see that this is going to be really valuable as we return and assess what does our new normal look like and how do I manage my real estate portfolio accordingly.
We've especially seen a real impact early on as people start to explore the impact of flexible leasing or co-working spaces on their portfolio as well. Using this, you can make really quantifiable, really quick adjustments to your employees' needs and just have like an incredible amount of transparency into exactly how much, how many dollars you can save because you're paying kind of like a per seat. So it's super tangible. So it's been really effective.
And the nice thing about this is if you install it and you have it over time, you avoid those issues that some of our customers were previously facing in those, you do a space study for a month or a few weeks, and there's always a reason that space study is invalid. There's always a reason that particular week there was, something going on, either that increased number of people in the space or decreased number of people in the space. And by, having this longitudinal data, having it over time, you just, without having to physically be in every single space, which obviously no one can be, you can just know how the space is being used and make really grounded, data-driven decisions about how you're going to adjust those spaces or, take on new space or consolidate space going forward.
Yeah, I think one thing we've learned is how much relationships factor into to this job. It's like you want to make people happy, but they'll make requests or you have monetary needs where consolidation needs to occur, and having data as a discussion point really makes that conversation less tension filled because you're just kind of working with reality rather than, how people feel. Well, the office felt crowded, but it was actually like one day a month that it was really crowded, and that's just kind of sticking in people's minds. So yeah, it's really made those conversations more productive. Cool. So I'm going to move to my demo. Before I do, Leanna, anything else to add?
No, that's all for now. Thanks.
All right, cool. Give me 1 second here. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Sweet. So this is our dashboard. So you install these sensors, you get them online with relative ease, and immediately they'll start collecting data. We really try to focus on 4 main functions within our dashboard. One is this spaces view, which is really your command center in which you can just kind of anecdotally try to get a sense for what's going on. So we're just trying to provide a high level overview of entrances into spaces, what the average occupancy or averages are for that particular space. You can see events funnel in real time. And this is really, really fascinating just to watch. It's kind of mesmerizing. We can generate events from our sensor to our backend in 700 milliseconds, so less than a second, to go all the way across the internet. I always love that fun fact. Then we just have quick ways to like browse daily trends and so on. But you can also create alerts from here. So if the first floor starts to near a certain level of occupancy, maybe it's some percentage of my capacity, I can essentially say, hey, if it gets above 40%, shoot me notification once, or once every certain period of time, so that you don't get spammed. Over the next quarter, we'll actually have email-based alerts and alert lists coming out as well here. So some really exciting releases around alerts. And again, you can always sort of open this space in analytics or share this with other employees if you're looking for a general overview. You can then, if you're looking for more detailed analysis, jump into our analytics application. So this is really for that power user trying to craft reports, maybe to justify a space request or a consolidation, or really anything. It's a very flexible tool. So you can create a list of reports. We also generate a list of recommended reports based on some of the types of spaces you have in your portfolio. So this is that available capacity report that I showed you. This is all demonstration data. That's why you're kind of seeing some flatness here and less anomalies, but you can see, how the chart really easily identifies some of these anomalies, and then gets you a really nice breakdown of, where you might have some opportunity to save some costs without impacting an employee or patron experience too much. You can run sort of reports every 15 minutes just to see like overall trends and how behavior changes throughout the day. And then the biggest thing, obviously, with this interface, you can really easily craft queries, adjust timeframes if you want to ignore weekends, and ensure that you're scoping things to the appropriate operating hour range, and it very quickly filters that time range. You can then export this data set as a time series data or the summary data set, and then import that into your own application. And of course, all this data is available via our API as well. And then if you're trying to collect these reports or collect a series of reports, we have a dashboard feature set that allows you to just kind of run a more robust analysis and create like a singular dashboard that can be updated dynamically over time. And then you can email a list of people a digest that occurs at some kind of cadence. So you could say every month to a group of people at density, send them this report that I've created. So then automatically, without prompt, it'll just kind of get a status of a space, and you can share that with your team and take action accordingly. And then lastly, and this is kind of our latest release, we allow people to create displays. Anyone can jump into our dashboard, essentially create a display which presents a real-time status of a provided space. So I know Leanna touched on a single space view that exposes the status, whether it's safe or not. But we also have a new directory view. So you can provide a list to patrons or employees of a number of spaces and their safety status, as well as expose a number of spaces within. But all these displays are highly editable. And you can just sort of have a number of ways to customize, and again, customize the view, customize the text on the side. You can change this from like your safe capacity. And as I mentioned before, you could change it to a target capacity, and all this updates in real time. So it'll fluctuate between, don't come in or come in whenever a space is actually safe to enter. So I know I kind of really flew through that, and I always do, but there's just kind of a jam. Our dashboard's jam-packed with features. So if you're interested in learning more and receiving a more comprehensive demo, of course, always happy to take requests and do something specific for you. Cool.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, anything I miss?
Nope, that looked like a comprehensive overview. So we have a few questions coming in. So the first one is your pricing model based on hardware per sensor deployment or subscription or something else? Can you tell us more about that?
Sorry, can you say that again, Leanna?
Oh, sorry. The question is your pricing model based on hardware and sensor, like number of hardware or sensors deployed, or subscription or something else? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, totally. So our product's broken up into, we have two fees. We have a hardware fee. So you can purchase the hardware and then a recurring subscription. Our pricing is actually posted on our website. Please visit that to kind of do some rough estimates, but know that obviously with scale, we have volume discounting and are more than willing to accommodate for your unique needs.
Great. And then how long is event or occupancy history kept in the system?
Forever. No expiration date on the data set at the moment.
Great. And of course, if a customer wants us to purge the data, we can, but
Yes.
ideally, as long as you want a continuous data set, that's something that we can currently support. There's another question that came in. Are the displays and sensors battery powered and secure Wi-Fi enabled? Like, is wiring required? How does that work? And can we do quick installs and relocations of sensors?
Our sensors are not battery powered. They require power at all times. We have an underlying philosophy of just an always on data set, and trying to avoid overtime maintenance costs and such. And then the real time nature of our product also requires a more consistent power supply. But it is very easily installable. You can plug it right into a wall outlet, hang it within a couple of minutes, and connect to any Wi-Fi very securely. So yeah, moving sensors around is relatively simple. Although a lot of our entry sensors are typically installed in places where there's thresholds where people aren't ripping down walls all the time. So we really advocate for kind of hanging them and leaving them and then observing over time while you make and adjust a space beneath.
Great. Next question. What is the ideal full-time employee headcount or space size minimum to best rationalize the costs and ROI of like the product of density?
What are the best? Sorry, I think it's on me. It's not on you.
No, it's effectively what's that like? Is there a number of people in your space that you should expect to rationalize the cost of density and the cost of deploying a system like density?
Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting way to phrase that question. I would say no. There's no magic number of people. I think there's a magic ratio of people. But what we've seen is that's really dependent on a company or a business's policy or culture. We have a lot of finance companies that are trying to break away from maybe more archaic mold where they have offices for executives, and they're trying to kind of push towards a more open office plan. But what that also means is less square footage for individuals. They're getting less space that is theirs. So typically it's really about what kind of culture you want to create. And what density allows you to do is really play with that dial, make those adjustments and see how your employees or patrons react.
Yeah. And maybe another way to think about the question is, what is the ROI of the product? Like how powerful is that return on my investment? And that's where I'd recommend you reach out to us. We're happy to talk through your particular use case and help you build an ROI case to evaluate, like, for each space that you're trying to monitor, does the cost of investment make sense or not? And sometimes those factors are very literal dollar and cents ROI. Sometimes it's the ability, like health and safety, the ability to keep your employees safe, avoid, a major issue in the workplace. It all just depends on your particular situation and your particular spaces. And we're so happy to talk to you about that. Next, can you communicate with customers before they arrive at the site, effectively, do you have a way that you can give this information to patrons, like the density information, before they actually go to the place?
Yeah, so that's very much what our display is designed for. So it's just kind of, you get access to a long-lived URL that you can provide on the website, or you can distribute to your patrons directly. We also have a native mobile application that if your patrons or employees, you can actually invite them to the density platform and they can have access to that information in real time as well. So there are a number of ways to distribute that information, but yeah, absolutely. And then of course you can use our API to build your own custom solution or integrate that into a third-party product.
Yeah, actually, this is something we saw was very prevalent with the universities and higher education institutions we work with in the fall as they were bringing students back. A lot of these higher education institutions have a like hospitality app or student mobile apps where students can go and get information about their classes or what's being served at the cafeteria. And they were also either creating their own custom displays within those mobile apps or actually just linking to more of like the directory view that Rob showed of, hey, these are all the cafeterias, these are how busy they are right now, so you can decide which dining hall to go to or how you're going to spend your time during the day because you actually have that information at your fingertips to go make that decision. Next question, can you connect your sensors to a building automation system?
Yeah, great question. We do support BACnet integrations upon request, and if the use case fits and the volume quantities are there. But yeah, our system definitely supports BACnet integrations.
Great. That looks like all of the questions that we had. Oh, someone asked, could we go back to the ROI? I'm not sure if you could maybe follow up if there's something specific around ROI that you're looking to talk about. We're happy to, if you can get a follow up in now, happy to talk to it, or happy to follow up offline in a one-on-one conversation if there's a specific ROI use case you want to talk about.
Not seeing anything. Why don't we try to follow
Yeah.
up with them directly, Leanna?
Yeah.
And yeah, happy to do that.
Okay. That sounds good.
Cool.
Well, thank you for your time, everyone. Oh, it looks like maybe one more. Oh yeah, yeah. We'll follow up directly with that individual. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We're really excited to share all of this with you, and please reach out to us. Let us know how we can be helpful as you're all thinking about keeping your spaces open, thinking through how to reopen them safely, and just making sure that you're able to use data to make decisions about your real estate portfolios over time.
Thanks, everyone.